Look, when I stepped into Nova Roma for the first time, I thought I knew what I was doing. I've played plenty of strategy games, city builders, that sort of thing. But this game, it has layers that I completely ignored at first and had to learn the hard way. And it's exactly those layers that separate those who are just surviving from those who are truly dominating. So whether you're someone who just built your first city, or you're already on your second campaign wondering why things feel stuck, these 10 advanced tips are going to completely change the way you play. Some of them I learned the hard way, and believe me, you don't need to make the same mistakes I did. I'm Matthew, and let's get into it. If there's one thing I've learned playing Nova Roma that no one talks about but completely changes the game, it's that most people, myself included, place small temples in any empty spot on the map, and that's exactly where they're throwing resources away. It's not just about building, it's about building right. And when it comes to small temples, placement is everything. Ceres, the goddess of agriculture, has a very specific mechanic. Her bonus applies directly to the 3 farms or orchards closest to the temple. This means if you drop her temple in the middle of a residential area because it looked nice in the layout, you are completely wasting her potential. The ideal setup is to build the Temple of Ceres right next to your farms, creating an agricultural production cluster. Do this right, and your granaries will overflow long before winter arrives. Now, Neptune is even more demanding. He increases the fish yield of the 5 nearest fishing buildings, but the keyword here is actually near. If your Temple of Neptune is a few tiles away from the fishing huts, it simply won't work as it should. You need to place this temple right against the fishing huts, practically touching them. When you do this correctly, the amount of fish coming into the city is massive, enough to sustain more demanding population tiers without needing to expand the fishing area significantly. So before you drop the next small temple into whatever free space appears, stop for a second and think, is this temple going to work for your people, or is it just going to be decoration? Ceres wants to be in the field. Neptune wants to see the sea, or at least the river. Respect the personality of each god, and they will reward you far beyond what you expected. This is the difference between a city that survives and a city that prospers. If you're wondering why your city isn't growing as fast as it should, the problem probably isn't the amount of food or water. It's happiness. And in Nova Roma, there is one specific god you need to respect if you want to see your population explode in a healthy way: Jupiter. He isn't just the king of the gods in myth, he is the king of urban growth within the game. The +3 happiness bonus that the Temple of Jupiter offers might seem small on paper, but once you understand that it works within a 5-block radius, the picture changes. That bonus doesn't just fall from the sky for an isolated house. It spreads through the entire neighborhood surrounding the temple. So the more houses you have in that radius, the more residents benefit simultaneously. It's a cascade effect that starts slowly, and soon you look at the map and your city is truly alive. The correct strategy here is to build the Temple of Jupiter and immediately surround it with hovels or insulae. Don't leave extra space, don't put decorative roads in the middle, and don't place plazas that waste tiles. The goal is to saturate that 5 radius area with residential housing. When the happiness of those houses goes up, the city starts attracting immigrants automatically. And immigrants are exactly what you need to have enough labor while the city is still growing. Many people build the Temple of Jupiter in the city center for aesthetics, and then throw a series of other buildings around it because it looks good in the layout. I understand the impulse, but you are wasting one of the most powerful resources in the game. Jupiter wants to be surrounded by people. Surround him with houses, let the bonus work, and you will see your population grow at a speed that makes every other player in your session wonder what you did differently. The answer is simple. You respected the king of the gods. When you open the Nova Roma tech tree for the first time, it's tempting to want to unlock everything at once. Improve production, expand roads, evolve temples, and in the chaos of it all, many people skip right past one of the most important unlocks in the entire game: the small insula. If you haven't focused on this yet, you are growing your city much slower than you need to. The problem with basic housing like hovels is simple. They take up space and house few citizens. In Nova Roma, land is a scarce resource, especially in the beginning when you are still expanding the city limits. The small insula solves this elegantly. It allows more citizens to live in the same physical space, which means you can densify the population without having to devour the entire map with housing. It's the difference between growing in a controlled way or constantly chasing space. But what truly makes the small insula a priority is the food counter on the ground floor. Besides serving food to residents more efficiently, it generates extra happiness for the building and the surrounding neighborhood. This means you are solving two problems at once: dense housing and happiness, the two pillars of rapid population growth. When combined with the correct placement of Jupiter temples, this effect becomes even more powerful. So, if you're starting a new match or are still in the early stages of your city, go straight to the favored tree and unlock the small insula before anything else that looks flashier. It's the kind of decision that seems small at the moment, but completely changes the pace of your game later on. Every experienced Nova Roma player will give you the same advice, because those who ignored this unlock the first time felt exactly how much it costs. You've unlocked the small insulae, densified your population, positioned the temples correctly, and yet your residents start becoming dissatisfied at some point. If this has happened to you, there is a good chance the culprit is a lack of pottery. It seems like a small detail, but small insulae have a clear requirement. Without pottery arriving consistently, their happiness starts to drop, and you will feel this directly in the immigration rate. The pottery production chain in Nova Roma works like this. You need a clay pit extracting clay and a charcoal maker producing charcoal, both feeding a pottery workshop. The problem most players face is that this chain has three links, and ignoring any one of them is enough to stall everything. Pottery doesn't appear out of nowhere, and a pottery workshop sitting idle due to a lack of inputs is one of the classic signs that something in the chain broke. And the bottleneck that almost no one notices in time is the charcoal maker. The clay pit is easy to remember because you see clay on the map and associate it directly with pottery. But charcoal is that invisible ingredient hidden in the production logic. And when the stock runs out, the pottery workshop simply stops, even with clay to spare. Monitoring charcoal production regularly, especially when expanding the city, is one of the habits that separates those who control the economy from those who are constantly putting out fires. So when you set up this chain, think of it as a triangle: clay, charcoal, and pottery. All three sides need to be working together for the structure to hold up. Place the buildings close to each other to optimize delivery time, ensure the charcoal maker has enough wood to operate, and keep an eye on pottery stocks before expanding your insulae further. Your city will thank you, and your residents will remain happy and keep attracting new immigrants at the pace you need. There is a silent problem that starts destroying cities in Nova Roma when they grow too large, and most players only notice it when production is already dropping for no apparent reason. You look at your factories, the resources are arriving, the workers exist, but the yield isn't the same as before. The culprit is almost always the distance between where your citizens live and where they work. In Nova Roma, distance causes fatigue, and tired citizens produce less. The game even tries to help you with this by automatically redistributing residents to balance the workflow across the city. But this automatic redistribution has a limit. It doesn't solve the problem when your industrial centers are physically too far from residential areas. Travel fatigue is a real mechanic in the game, and it directly affects the productivity of workers in those distant buildings. The further a citizen lives from work, the less efficient they become over time. The solution is simpler than it seems. When you decide to expand your industrial area to a region further from the center, bring housing with it. Build a small, compact residential block near this new production hub. A few hovels or small insulae are enough to feed the local labor demand. This eliminates the long commute, keeps citizens rested, and ensures that the new industrial area operates at maximum capacity from the start. Think of your city as a network of functional neighborhoods, not as a single center that controls everything around it. Every industrial hub you create away from the city core deserves to have its own small residential core next to it. This mindset of compact, self-sufficient blocks is what keeps productivity stable even when the city is growing in all directions. Don't wait for the drop to appear in the numbers to react. Plan the neighborhood along with the factory, and you will never have this problem. There is an error that destroys entire cities in Nova Roma, and that almost no one notices until it's too late: relying exclusively on wells for water supply. At the beginning of the match, wells work fine, they get the job done, and you even forget the problem exists. But when your city starts growing for real and you try to build your first bathhouses, reality hits you in the face. Wells simply don't have the capacity to sustain a large city, let alone Roman bath complexes. The aqueduct system in Nova Roma requires early planning. You need to identify a water source in the mountains and plot the aqueduct's path with the correct slope until it reaches the water towers inside the city. This detail about the slope is where many people get stuck. The game simulates water physics quite realistically, and if your aqueduct doesn't have the proper inclination from the source to the reservoir, the water simply won't flow. You build everything correctly, open the game expecting to see water arriving, and nothing. Bathhouses are one of the most powerful buildings in the game for city health and status, but they are completely useless without a constant water supply coming from the aqueduct system. When functioning correctly, they increase the overall health of the population, reduce mortality, and elevate the status of surrounding housing, which clears the way for wealthier residents and more advanced buildings. It is one of the most impactful progression chains in the entire game, and it all starts with that water tower receiving mountain water. So if you are still in the early stages of a match, look at the map now and start planning where your aqueduct will run. Don't wait for your city to grow to think about this, because by the time you feel the need for bathhouses, it will be too late to fix a poorly positioned aqueduct without tearing down half of what you built. Water planning in Nova Roma isn't a detail. It's the backbone of any city that intends to truly last and prosper. There is a phase in almost every Nova Roma match where you look at the map and realize the forests surrounding the city are getting dangerously thin. You've been chopping down tree after tree to get wood, pushing the limits of the green area without much thought, and suddenly the resource that seemed infinite at the start begins to show signs of exhaustion. If this has happened to you, know that it isn't bad luck. It's a direct consequence of not automating wood collection early enough. Foresters are the solution to this problem, and the sooner you unlock them, the better for your city's long-term health. They don't just collect wood automatically and continuously, they also replant trees in their area of operation, creating a sustainable resource cycle. This means that instead of consuming the forest, you begin to manage it, and that difference is huge when you're in the mid-game trying to keep multiple production chains running at once. The most critical impact of ignoring foresters appears in the late game when the demand for charcoal spikes. Remember the pottery chain with the charcoal maker? Well, charcoal comes from wood. If you destroyed the nearby forests during the early game by manual clear cutting, there comes a time when the charcoal maker no longer has enough input to operate. And then that entire production chain you set up so carefully begins to choke. It's a domino effect that starts with a decision you made way back that seemed harmless at the time. So treat foresters as a priority in your unlock tree, position them on the edges of the city's forested areas, and let the system work for you. A managed forest is a guaranteed resource, and a guaranteed resource is a city that doesn't stall at the worst possible time. Anyone who learned this lesson the hard way, losing charcoal production in the late game due to over-deforestation at the start, will never open a new match again without putting foresters in the plan from the very first moment. You know that moment when your city looks beautiful, food is plentiful, and you think you've finally beaten the game? That is exactly when bankruptcy knocks on your door. When you start trying to build the most advanced buildings or think about putting together a respectable army to expand your borders, you realize the hole goes much deeper. The game starts charging you for a resource that seemed fine at the beginning, but now dictates the rules of everything: gold. And if you didn't prepare for this financially, your progression simply freezes. The big mistake almost every player makes is relying too much on the gods to fill the coffers. Yes, temples do store and generate a little gold at the start of your campaign, and this creates a false sense of security. But the cold, hard truth is that the religious economy doesn't scale. When your city reaches a certain size, that gold from the temples doesn't even pay for the basic maintenance of your high-level structures. It is at this exact moment, right after your basic survival economy stabilizes, that you need to focus on building the tax office. The tax office is the true financial engine of any self-respecting metropolis in this game. It is what will take that giant population you attracted with happiness bonuses and turn it into a constant mountain of money. It is the only structure capable of scaling your income in the same proportion that your city grows. With a well-structured and comprehensive tax collection, you stop counting coins and start financing heavy military expansions without breaking a sweat every time the payment cycle turns. So, change your strategy in your next session. Don't wait for the crisis to arrive to think about taxes. As soon as you ensure your people have food, water, and pottery, get the tax office running and start enriching the city. Let the gods take care of the souls and happiness of your citizens. Because what's going to bankroll the true power of your empire and guarantee your endgame is good old-fashioned tax collection. That is how you stop being a mere village administrator and become a true emperor. This is one of those tips that seem simple on paper, but make a massive difference in the heat of a match. Many people look at the Temple of Mars as just another religious building, when in fact it can become a centerpiece of your defense. I like to think of it as that silent nudge that transforms an acceptable defense line into a wall that actually scares invaders. The secret here is not to treat guard towers as isolated structures. If you position the Temple of Mars near them, that damage bonus makes every shot hit harder, and that completely changes the outcome of a surprise attack. Instead of seeing barbarians advancing into productive areas, you start eliminating the threat before it enters the heart of the city. It's the kind of detail that saves not just soldiers, but your entire economy. What I like most about this tip is that it rewards intelligent planning, not just reaction. There are players who invest heavily in production, housing, and expansion, but leave defense as a problem to be solved later. Then an invasion comes, a tower falls too fast, and suddenly the industrial district turns into chaos. When Mars is well positioned, you feel the city responding with much more firmness, as if it were finally ready to protect everything it built. So, if you want to play Nova Roma more safely and efficiently, start looking at temples of Mars as part of the city's military architecture. Don't put this temple wherever there's leftover space. Put it where it will actually strengthen your towers. To me, this is easily one of the best combat tips in the game because it doesn't depend on luck or improvisation. It depends only on intelligent positioning, and that is entirely in your hands. This is one of those tips that I consider absolutely essential in Nova Roma because many people still treat divine tasks as if they were optional side missions when, in fact, they function as a disaster prevention system. When you meet the gods' demands, you aren't just gaining nice bonuses, you are avoiding retaliations that can destroy months of progress in a few moments. Jupiter's lightning and floods, Ceres' plagues that wipe out your crops, and uncontrollable fires sparked by Vulcan. What I love most about this mechanic is that it forces you to play Nova Roma like a true risk manager, not just a city builder. You can have the most balanced economy, the most efficient production, and sky-high happiness, but if you ignore the gods' requests, a single curse at the wrong time can dismantle everything. It's as if the game is constantly reminding you that in ancient Rome, the gods weren't just symbols, but real forces that could bless or ruin an entire civilization. In practice, I view these divine tasks as a kind of preventive maintenance for your city. If you follow the requests closely and meet the requirements before the situation becomes critical, you avoid that nightmare scenario where your harvest vanishes out of nowhere, fire consumes your industrial district, or a lightning bolt from Jupiter sets everything ablaze right when you are about to expand. Keeping the gods satisfied is just as important as keeping the people fed, because a prosperous but cursed city turns to ruin very quickly. And there is a detail that I consider the true ace up any experienced player's sleeve. The festival in the large temple works as an emergency rescue when the city's spiritual situation has already started to go south. It's not the kind of resource you want to use all the time, but it's exactly the kind of tool that separates a difficult recovery from a total collapse. Ultimately, this tip sums up the spirit of Nova Roma well. The gods are not decorations, they're active participants in the fate of your city, and ignoring that is asking to lose everything in the cruelest way possible.